Um, Today, we're going to talk about AI education for RIM professionals, what's here and what's next. So thank you for joining us today. I'm Beth Thomas. I'm the chapter president for ARMA Madison this year. And our mission is to advance information management knowledge and practices by sharing and exchanging experiences and by promoting opportunities for our members' professional development, ongoing education, and networking. So thanks to you all who joined us for the networking session just prior. We're trying to do that this year to sort of get the conversation going and get people chatting. So we would love to put out a plug in here to join the ARMA Madison chapter. So please consider supporting us by becoming a member. We have a $30 membership fee, and your support enables us to keep offering programming and cover our chapter expenses. This year, for our commitment to our community, we've selected the Sunshine Place as a fundraiser. So this fundraiser will be open January through the end of May. And you can learn more about it at the Sunshine Place. I'm sure someone from the board will drop that link in the chat for me here momentarily. And Sunshine Place serves individuals throughout the Sun Prairie and Eastern Dane County region. Through a combination of programs and community partnerships that include food support services, legal and housing assistance, beds and clothing for kids, and other necessities for family and household stability. So we thank you for contributing to that for our local Madison area and on behalf of the chapter. Just a little program housekeeping before we get going. Today's program will be recorded, and a link to the recording and the slide deck will be sent to all the registrants and all ARMA Madison chapter members. So we've got board members keeping an eye on things, but please mute your microphones and turn off camera for bandwidth conservation. Sometimes it helps to turn off VPN if you're finding some lag. Otherwise, we'd like to remind you to enter your questions in the Q&A feature. The Q&A button is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Sometimes those buttons move around, so see if you can find it here before we dive too far in and you've got that burning question. Otherwise, feel free to engage with your fellow attendees in the chat feature as we go. So today it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Sheri Nystedt. Sheri is a highly respected leader in the information and records governance space with more than 2 decades of experience advancing effective, practical governance programs across multiple sectors. She currently serves as the executive director and head of information and records governance. Oh, I should have asked how to say this. Is it Janus or Janus?
No, it's Janus Henderson.
Janus Henderson, thank you, investors, and is deeply engaged in the profession through her work at ARMA, ICRM, and academic advisory boards. Sheri brings a thoughtful, real-world perspective on how emerging technologies, especially AI, are shaping the future of our work. So before we dive in, Sheri, I will let you start taking the screen share and invite you to share anything else you'd like the group to know as I hand it over. And you are on mute. There we go.
Yep,
I see you
nope.
come off.
I know, because all of a sudden it like disappeared. And I went, wait, where'd it go? Where'd it
The
go?
panic ensues.
I know, it's just crazy. Well, thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it. I'm actually really excited to, talk with all of you today about how artificial intelligence is changing the world of records and information management. It's like what's already here, which I think based on the kind of early on chat, it's like everybody's, I think, sounds like you're already dabbing into it. What's coming next, and then how can we all prepare to thrive in this new landscape? Whether you're just starting to explore it, I know a lot of people that they're still a little afraid, right? They're just afraid of what it's going to do. Or if you're already experimenting with new tools, I guess my goal today is to just try to demystify it, show practical impacts to RIM, and then give you some governance and skill moves that you can act on immediately. But my quick promise to you is I'm not getting into the deep tech. We're just really what RIM professionals need to do to lead responsibly. All right, I'll get started here. So our agenda today, we're basically going to move through 5 quick parts. First, AI fundamentals, AI's impact on RIM, governance and standards, upskilling, and then finally the learning landscape. If you only take one thing away from this presentation today, it's that AI actually increases the value of RIM judgment because governance, evidence, and accountability matter more than ever now. So, what do we mean when we talk about artificial intelligence? At its core, AI is just about machines simulating aspects of human intelligence. That can range from relatively simple automation, like applying rules or sorting information, to more complex activities such as pattern recognition, language processing, and decision support. The way I look at it is it's really helpful to think of it, of AI as a family of capabilities. Machine learning learns from data and improves over time. Natural language processing works with written and spoken language. Generative AI creates new content such as text and images and some of those fun photos that we all, kind of make of ourselves and post on Facebook or whatever, like Instagram. Um, and then agentic AI goes a step further by acting towards more defined goals, but always with appropriate human oversight. So for today's discussion, the focus isn't on memorizing definitions. Instead, we're going to concentrate on what these capabilities actually change in RIM work, how they affect classification, search, retention, governance, and the role of professional judgment. So just as important as what it can do is what AI can't do. And this is where there's a lot of confusion and hype where it can creep in. Um, First, AI does not replace human judgment, especially when it comes to complex or ethical decisions. I mean, even the most advanced systems still need oversight. So, for example, if AI suggests deleting a set of records, it's up to us as room professionals to ensure that that decision aligns with legal holds or just our general regulatory retention requirements or legal, regulatory and legal, because not everybody's regulatory. Second, AI does not guarantee accuracy. Its outputs are only as good as the data it's trained on and the instructions it's given. So if your data is messy or incomplete, we're going to get unreliable results. And I think you'll all know this phrase. It's what we call garbage in, garbage out. That's been around for just decades, I feel. Third, AI does not truly understand context or intent the way a person does. I mean, it can process information, but it doesn't actually know the bigger picture. For instance, it might not recognize that a document is sensitive because of a nuance in the way that your organization tags content. Fourth, AI does not ensure compliance or governance automatically. I feel like this is a misnomer, especially some of the organizations that I talk to. Human review is absolutely essential to interpret results, validate decisions, and then ensure alignment with policies and regulations. And finally, AI does not eliminate the need for RIM professionals. If anything, I mean, it makes our expertise even more valuable because we're the ones who set the guardrails. We interpret the results and we ensure that technology is used responsibly. So as we move forward today here, the key message is bounded trust. AI doesn't replace judgment, context, or accountability. And that's why RIM expertise becomes more critical, not less. So let's just shift to what AI is changing in the daily RIM practices. So where it helps, where it introduces risk, and where RIM leadership shows up. So how exactly is AI transforming RIM? Well, AI is changing records and information management in three core ways: speed, consistency, and insight. First, speed. AI can automate repeatable, high volume work such as classification, search, monitoring, and initial risk flagging. So tasks that once took hours or days can now happen in seconds, freeing RIM professionals to focus on higher value activities like governance design, exception handling, and advisory work. Next, consistency. When AI is properly configured and governed, it applies rules and patterns the same way every time. So this reduces variability caused by manual processes, supports more uniform classification and retention decisions, and improves defensibility, especially in large distributed environments. And then finally, insight. AI doesn't just process information faster. It can surface patterns and anomalies and then risks much earlier than traditional approaches have ever been able to do. So this means that RIM, we can identify emerging compliance issues, data quality gaps, or even unusual access behaviors before they even escalate. However, I think from a transformation perspective, I mean, this really raises the bar because automation operates at scale it amplifies both the good and the bad outcomes. So that's why AI increases the need for even more stringent, strong controls, higher transparency, and then absolutely high quality data, along with clear oversight and accountability. So in short, AI reduces effort, it increases consistency, and it surfaces risk earlier, shifting RIM from reactive control to proactive insight. So take a moment and think about your own environment. Like which of these capabilities, such as classification, search, or monitoring, what would remove the most friction today within your organization? Not in theory, but in the work that you actually do. Just something to take away. So now let's look at some of the key capabilities that AI brings to RIM and how they play out in the real organizations. If you remember just three core capabilities, we want to focus on auto classification, natural language search, and compliance monitoring. So auto classification allows records to be categorized based on content and context, reducing reliance on manual tagging and improving consistency at scale. Natural language search enables users to find information using plain language queries, improving access while reducing time spent navigating folders on our file shares or in SharePoint or metadata structures. Then compliance monitoring. This uses AI to flag anomalies, gaps, or risks, such as missing metadata, unusual access patterns, or even retention exceptions, much earlier in the life cycle. These three capabilities are the building blocks for more advanced uses, such as dynamic retention recommendations and metadata enrichment, where AI can suggest actions or enhancements based on usage patterns, regulatory signals, and historical behavior. The key message here is that RIM is moving away from manual, inconsistent handling toward governed automation with measurable outcomes for greater accuracy, faster response times, and much clearer audit evidence. And for RIM, the governance question never really changes. It's about what is automated, what is reviewed by humans, and what evidence do we need to keep to demonstrate control and accountability. So looking ahead, there are three clear what's next signals for RIM. First, analytics that act like a pre-audit lens. AI-driven analytics are increasingly able to correlate access patterns, retention exceptions, and metadata gaps to highlight emerging risks before an audit or incident occurs. So this shifts RIM from responding to findings after the fact to being able to proactively identify and address issues much earlier in the life cycle. Second, blockchain for integrity and chain of custody. While adoption varies by industry, in fact, my company is now using this, blockchain shows its promise where when you think about record authenticity and tamper evidence are critical in some of the record keeping requirements for financial services, it's like there's certain records that we have to maintain in a tamper-proof storage platform. And blockchain actually provides probably a little bit better of a solution than the traditional just standard storage platforms. It can strengthen proof of record integrity, it can support long-term preservation, and it does provide a much better transparent audit trail, particularly again in highly regulated or evidentiary contexts. Third, enhanced automation, which includes more advanced agent-style workflows. This goes beyond task automation to orchestrating like end-to-end processes such as classification, retention recommendations, and exception routing, always with defined checkpoints though for human review. So you can't ever stress that enough, that human in the loop is just a critical requirement. And you don't need to know all of these tomorrow, but as these capabilities mature, you should expect governance expectations to rise. There's going to be more scrutiny on explainability, more scrutiny on control design, as well as documented oversight. The intent here isn't really urgency, it's more around awareness. So treat these as trend signals because it'll help you better plan for pilots, controls, and governance models intentionally, rather than reacting once expectations are already set, which I know all of our organizations love to do. And of course, with new technology, there comes challenges, right? New challenges every day. AI raises the stakes for RIM in three key areas: data quality and sensitive information, security and privacy, and ethics and adaptation. First, data quality and sensitivity. So again, the classic garbage in, garbage out problem becomes far more visible with AI. If records are poorly classified, incomplete, or mislabeled, especially sensitive records, AI is going to surface and potentially act on those errors at scale. And that can cause significant issues within your organization. Second, security and privacy. AI systems process large volumes of information and often aggregate data in new ways. So that increases the importance of having strong access controls in place, having sufficient monitoring in place, and very clear, distinct boundaries around how information is used and shared within your organization, as well as externally. Third, ethics and adaptation. As AI influences decisions, organizations must be able to explain the outcomes. It's important to be able to detect bias or drift, and you need to be able to adapt controls as technology and risk profiles evolve. So this is, to me, in my opinion, my humble opinion, this is where RIM's control mindset becomes more of a competitive advantage because we bring structure, governance, and accountability to the environment where automation can otherwise move faster than general oversight. But let's not lose sight of the opportunities that are presenting themselves. Every challenge that we've just discussed maps directly to an opportunity for RIM to lead, to set guardrails, to guide responsible use, and help shape how AI is adopted across the organization. I think as RIM professionals, we're uniquely positioned to translate AI capabilities into what organizations actually need, which includes like clear policies, defensible evidence, audit-ready processes, as well as measurable risk reduction. So while others focus on speed and innovation, because you're always going to have that subset of people in your organizations like, let's go, let's go, let's go. This is fun. This is new. We got to play. I think it's our role to ensure that automation remains compliant, explainable, and accountable. It's striving to find that balance. You don't want to disrupt business, but we want to make sure that we're doing it in the right way. So this is where upskilling actually matters. So as AI becomes embedded in our everyday processes, I think RIM professionals who understand both the governance principles as well as the AI-driven workflows have the ability to become trusted advisors. It's like we want to be the people who can say, yes, we can do that, but just as importantly say, but here are the guardrails, here are the controls, and here's the evidence that we need to do it responsibly. When we say RIM leads governance, this isn't abstract. I mean, it shows up in what I consider at least very practical ways. It's the same thing, updating policies to explicitly address AI-assisted decisions, no different than any other piece of technology, right, we use. Define what evidence must be retained. I mean, that's just core foundation to records management. And then clarifying who actually signs off on automated actions. So from a RIM perspective, strategic innovation isn't about chasing tools. It's about shaping how those tools are used so they reduce risk rather than introduce new exposure. And when RIM professionals upskill, the payoff is influence. This is how you can become the person that leaders turn to when they ask, again, can we do this? And you can confidently answer, yes, and here's how we govern it. So in that role, RIM isn't reacting to AI. It's that what we're doing is we're actively shaping how AI delivers value safely and sustainably. So how do you actually adopt AI in a responsible, effective way? So the way, at least the approach that we've taken, right? It's the most reliable approach. It's a governance first adoption pattern. We first start by assessing the existing RIM processes to identify where can AI add value without introducing unnecessary risk. Then it's important to align the right stakeholders early, which includes RIM, legal, IT, privacy, possibly technology, depends on how your organization is structured. So expectations and responsibilities are completely clear from the outset. If this roadmap feels familiar, it's because it mirrors actually how we already approach risk, right? We assess impact, we define controls, we test before we scale, and we keep our evidence. AI adoption really, to me, is not a new discipline. It's just an extension of governance patterns that we already own as RIM professionals. From there, you want to define success metrics up front. You look at it from, pilot a narrow, well-defined use case first. Measure the results, and then you can consider scaling. Because for my opinion, again, it's not about experimentation for its own sake, which I think when you get in the business, that's what they want to do, but it's really about learning in a more controlled, evidence-based way. And the key is to not flip the switch. Effective AI adoption is an evidence-driven rollout with checkpoints where accuracy, oversight, and governance mature alongside the technology. So if you do nothing else, start small, measure accuracy, and document decisions. It's important to define success in measurable terms. Again, accuracy rates, identify false positives and negatives, and then finally auditability. It's not just about, well, this feels better. Because I literally had somebody say that in my organization. This just feels better. It feels like it's going to be better. I had to laugh at that. So now I want to talk about, there's really 5 failure modes that I tend to see repeatedly when organizations adopt AI, but I mean, every one of these is completely preventable. These failure modes include unclear, undefined objectives. Again, the flip the switch mindset / big bang rollout, skill gaps, over automation, and then compliance drift. None of these are actually technology problems. They're actually governance and change management problems. So when objectives aren't defined, teams can't tell whether AI is actually helping their business process or hurting it. The big bang rollouts, they just create more confusion and control gaps. And then skill gaps leave people unable to validate or challenge AI outputs because they're really unsure of what they're looking at. So they just tend to rubber stamp or they don't want to opine at all. Over automation, it removes human judgment where it's still needed. And then the compliance drift happens when processes evolve faster than our policies and oversight do. So all of these risks, I mean, they're completely avoidable if you use phased delivery, role-based training, and explicit human-in-the-loop controls for higher risk actions. Again, it comes down to if you pilot narrowly, then you can build confidence, right, in the process that you're building out of the AI application. Then you can document the decisions, and only then scale with intention. I think a simple way to think about this is the way it's automation for low risk work, and then it's oversight for high impact decisions. That mindset keeps AI useful, defensible, and then aligned with RIM's core responsibility for control and accountability. And then that naturally brings us to the foundation that makes any of this work. It should be data quality, controls, and then the governance discipline that I think RIM already owns. So first, let's talk about data quality because it really is the backbone of successful AI. At the end of the day, AI only works as well as the information it's trained on and allowed to act upon. That means AI success depends on RIM fundamentals done well, clear metadata standards, validation to capture, defined stewardship, and then regular review cadence. None of this is new. What is new is the urgency because now it's like build it now, we want to use it now, we want it in a week. So what AI is doing, it's amplifying whatever quality that we already have today in our data. So if metadata is inconsistent or sensitive records are misclassified, AI is going to surface that and potentially act on those issues much faster and at a greater scale than a manual process ever could. And that increases our risk. So that's why data quality, it cannot be treated as a downstream cleanup activity or an IT only concern. It's an ongoing governance discipline, one that requires ownership, accountability, and continuous oversight. The message here is really simple, but it's critical. Again, strong data quality, it isn't a prerequisite for AI later. It is the price of entry now, and it is squarely in RIM's lane. If we let it, if we, we have to push forward and make ourselves present. So next, let's connect AI to what RIM does best: standards, controls, documentation, and accountability. This section is more about the rules of the road so that AI use is defensible and auditable. At a high level, frameworks like ISO and NIST, I mean, they're shaping expectations for AI risk management and governance. These frameworks aren't about prescribing specific tools. They're about establishing common principles: risk-based controls, transparency, explainability, accountability, and the ability to evidence decisions. Increasingly, those expectations are being reflected in audits, regulatory reviews, as well as client due diligence questions. Based at my organization, we get a lot of client due dils, and the AI is at the forefront. I mean, we get a lot of in-depth questions around: are we using it? How are we using it? How are we controlling it? How are we governing it? So it's interesting to see how that's just over in the last 6 months to a year, how much that's started to increase. Then next in the cross-border and regulated environments, I think the bar is even higher because organizations are now expected to explain how AI-driven decisions are made. They need to be able to demonstrate appropriate human oversight, And they need to be able to show that records and controls can withstand scrutiny across jurisdictions. The key takeaway here is you don't need to be a standards expert or memorize every framework. What matters is understanding the actual governance themes that they reinforce, and then ensuring that your governance or your RIM practices actually align accordingly. So if you can show clear policies, documented decision-making, audit trails, review processes, you're already meeting the spirit of these standards and positioning your organization for what's coming next. This slide I've included as a reference point. It highlights some ISO standards that address AI concepts, risk management, management systems, along with like the NIST AI risk management framework. It's a really interesting read, as well as some related ethics guidance. So in day-to-day practice, I mean, the mindset to adopt is, quote, unquote, show your work. That means documenting how do our AI tools behave? What decisions do they support or automate? And then how are the associated risks identified, managed, and reviewed? So with that foundation in place, we can now move from frameworks to execution and translate these expectations into practical, repeatable governance steps. So here are 5 practical actions that you can take right now as a RIM professional. First, maintain audit trails of AI-supported decisions. What the tool did, what thresholds were applied, and where human review occurred. Next, benchmark outputs regularly. This is important so that you can spot any kind of drift, any bias, or declining accuracy over time. Next would be track your regulatory and standards updates. I think focus on how expectations for transparency, explainability, and oversight are evolving over time. And then next, this is really an important one. It's such an easy one to leverage, is use your professional communities and the standards bodies as early warning signals and actually get involved. I mean, a lot of these organizations, especially standards bodies, I mean, they look for organizations to, collaborate there. So you shouldn't look at it as just an after the fact validation. Get involved, talk to people. And then finally, align your internal policies, right, around AI use, records retention, privacy, security. What we want is to have them reinforce each other rather than conflict. So that's a really, really critical step. I think, again, from my perspective, the unifying idea behind all of this is simple, right? I want to build an evidence trail. I want to be able to show what I did, why I did it, how we did it, kind of all the standard things that we do every day in our jobs. And what does this mean? Making sure we've got decision logs. Again, got the thresholds documented. We record our exceptions, and we have got a clear approval line. I think this is the evidence that makes AI defensible during audits, regulatory reviews, again, client due diligence, or when something goes wrong and you need to show not just what happened, but how it was governed. So I have a quick scenario here. Before we look at that, I want you to ask yourself a simple question. If something went wrong today with AI-driven classification or access, could your team show, not just say, how decisions were made? So my scenario here is that we've got a set of sensitive records misclassified and unintentionally exposed. So this kind of situation immediately gets attention, right? But the lesson here isn't the drama, because it always ends up in drama, of the incident itself. It's the repeatable response that follows. So a strong response pattern, it's consistent and well documented. We contain the issue, we document what happened, we notify the right stakeholders, we diagnose the root cause, we test for bias or model drift, and then we update our controls so that it doesn't happen again. Each step reinforces accountability and then reduces the likelihood of reoccurrence in the future. What matters most is not whether AI ever makes a mistake, because it's going to. It's around whether your response is documented, defensible, and aligned to governance frameworks. When that's the case, you can demonstrate responsible oversight even when the outcomes aren't perfect. So this is the moment actually that auditors, regulators, and clients, they care about the most. It's your control story and your evidence trail, what you knew, what you did, and how you improved it. And governance, I think organizations, they always feel like, well, governance, it's a roadblock, right? But it doesn't. It doesn't slow people down. It's an empowerment. And that's why the next focus is critical. Investing in the skills that make all of this sustainable for us. So here's a quick reality check. doing nothing is still a choice. AI is already showing up in search, content creation, our email, our collaboration tools, right? And the governance gaps, they don't stay invisible. So the risk isn't about adopting AI, it's actually letting adoption outrun oversight. So staying relevant in an AI-driven environment is, again, it's really about skills. It's not about the syntax. So for RIM, what this means is it governance fluency, understanding behavior for AI models and whatnot, and then leading organizations through change with confidence. So I've got three pillars to upskilling. One, staying current, championing ethical AI, and then leading change is the final one. Staying current means understanding how AI tools evolve and where their limitations are, not at a technical level, but more more at so enough, sorry, enough to recognize failure modes. So you want to be able to interpret outputs. You need to be able to ask the right questions. So I think because AI is moving so quickly, what works now or worked 6 months ago is absolutely probably going to behave differently today. So I think it's critical as a RIM professional, you've got to be able to flex, right? You have to be able to pivot. Because if we just stay in our narrow little lanes, it's like, I mean, you get left behind. So in championing ethical AI, I mean, this is really about governance and practice. So for RIM, this means, again, I say these words all the time, explainability. It's requiring explainability, maintaining human review for high impact decisions like access, retention, disposition, and ensuring those decisions can be justified after the fact, not just when things go well. It's a common theme, but it's just so very critical around AI. And then leading change, this is really about helping our organizations adapt responsibility. This includes, again, documenting decisions, updating our workflows and policies, and making governance visible so that people understand how the AI is used and then where accountability sits. The key point is upskilling is about confidence and oversight. It is not about becoming a data scientist, even though that would be pretty cool. It's about being able to supervise our AI-enabled processes with clarity, credibility, and control. So a simple practical approach to upskilling starts with intent and sequencing. First, begin by assessing the gaps. Like, what are you confident in today? And where is AI starting to touch your work within your organization? Then pick learning that actually maps directly to your next use case. Don't just go after a generic AI education. I mean, there's so many different, or like workshops and webinars and all that popping up. So the goal really here is about relevance, not volume, not how many, classes you can take. But then from there, what I've tried to do is create a 90-day plan because I want to build just enough technical literacy to understand how those tools behave and then make sure that I can align my policies and my culture so that governance expectations are very clear to my organization and all of my internal clients. And then, really be prepared to lead change as these processes continue to evolve within the organization. The real trick is sequencing. You learn, you apply, and then you evidence. Learn just enough to act, apply to a narrow real scenario, and then document what happened. Again, decisions made, are the controls applied, how have we measured those outcomes? And if you leave here with only one next step, make it this. Choose one skill to strengthen and one pilot adjacent learning move that you can apply in the near term. So which competencies actually matter most for day-to-day oversight in an AI-enabled RIM environment? Well, to thrive in such an environment today, I think we don't need, again, deep technical expertise, but we need fluency in the essentials. And that fluency rests on 4 core competency areas that form the foundation for effective oversight. First, model understanding. Knowing what a system is designed to do, the types of inputs it relies on, and its limitations. Second, analytics and machine learning. Enough literacy to interpret the outputs, track accuracy and error rates, and then recognize when the results don't look right. Third, I can never say this word, algorithmic governance. So this is all around documenting thresholds, the overrides on models, the approval processes, and then the accountability for the AI-supported decisions. Last, the AI-driven compliance awareness. We need to ensure that automated actions respect retention requirements, our legal holds, as well as other regulatory obligations. Because here, again, we don't want to increase our risk, right? We want to maintain it, manage it, or reduce it. Put simply in RIM terms, what this means, understanding inputs and outputs, monitoring error rates, documenting decisions and exceptions, and confirming that legal and retention controls always take precedence. This is the practical fluency required to supervise AI safely and credibly, providing governance, oversight, and confidence as AI becomes embedded in everyday information management processes. So here I've put together an AI-enabled RIM competency matrix. What this shows is how competencies can progress over time, from foundational awareness to proficient application to leadership maturity. It's not about everyone reaching the same level. It's about ensuring that the right skills exist in the right roles. I mean, most teams are going to have a mixture, right? Leaders need the framework so they can set direction, set expectations, and governance standards. Practitioners need the workflows and hands-on guidance to apply those standards consistently in their day-to-day work. Used this way, the matrix really becomes a roadmap. It can help you design role-based training, prioritize development efforts, and then set realistic expectations as AI becomes more embedded in our RIM processes. Like the goal, it's not about uniform expertise. It's clarity about who needs to know what and how those skills need to evolve as the responsibilities increase. And I think one practical way to use this matrix is around expectation setting. Like leaders shouldn't expect foundational staff to explain model behavior in audits, and practitioners shouldn't be left guessing what the governance intent is. So the matrix is meant to help align responsibility with accountability. So I have a brief personal check-in for everyone. So here's a list of assessment questions for you. Rate your confidence as low, medium, or high against these questions, and then identify one area that you can work to strengthen on over the next quarter. The goal isn't about perfection. It's about steady, defensible improvement, progress that you can explain in evidence, to your management over time. So now the next slide, we're going to look at readiness at the program level, actually. So I've got just some sample questions from, we can ask from our organizational, again, perspective. Like what we want to do here is think in terms of maturity, not completeness, because most organizations are not going to be strong across all of these dimensions, and that's perfectly normal. But what matters is whether we have enough structure to see issues early and then respond intentionally. Because even a lightweight charter, a clear RACI, or a basic issue intake process creates visibility and accountability where none existed before. So try to think here. My one, governance credibility comes from consistency, not sophistication. Small visible steps done well and revisited regularly. They send a powerful signal to auditors, the regulators, and the leadership that AI use is being managed responsibility. So when you look at these questions, take those back and, kind of rank them similar like what you do for your personal. It's like, where do we really sit in the organization? What areas can we work on and make improvements in? It's like, who do we need to, bring in from a stakeholder perspective? And just kind of, rank that. And then again, set up some kind of process around evaluation and then identifying what steps maybe need to be taken to expand the maturity in those areas. So as we wrap up this section, I encourage you to take 20 seconds, write down one process to target with AI, one skill to build, and then one risk to monitor. And then that can be your next quarter action plan. It's simple, it's practical, and it's governance aligned. So we'll close by focusing on how to choose learning options without getting lost in a big catalog. The aim is really fit for purpose learning because it's selected because, it supports your work, right? And the decisions that you actually need to make, not just because, yes, we like to take things for fun, but, I think these days we're also, everybody's organizations are running lean, right? And so we all got a lot of work on our plate. So we want to really focus in on those things that actually help enhance our skills and, and support the responsibilities that we have. And so with that in mind, we're going to go to the next slide and look at main categories of learning so you can decide like what's worth your time and your intention. So what I have here are 3 primary learning paths to consider. First, your industry certifications. Certifications provide structured credibility. They're useful for establishing a shared governance vocabulary, as well as demonstrating alignment with risk and compliance expectations. Workshops are ideal for hands-on skill building, especially when you need to practice using tools, like around reviewing outputs and handling exceptions. And then there are short academic programs out there. I'm not covering like the full-on degrees because there's a ton. But these short programs, they offer like a deeper breadth when you're looking at more context around information governance, compliance, or even just AI concepts without committing to a full like 4-year degree. And I see a lot of them too. They're adding on, like you have a 4-year degree, but then they're adding on like just different AI tracks. But they seem to be more technology focused based on what I'm seeing. So we're just kind of keeping an eye out to see what comes up the pike in the next, 6 months to a year. But when you're looking at this, the selection rule is really simple, but it's powerful. If you cannot draw a clear line from the learning outcome to your next, either your pilot, your governance task, and just any kind of decision that you own, it's just your general responsibilities, then just skip it. Focus on learning whatever directly supports the work that you need to do now or in the near, very near short term. Here I've got another list. It's like, again, these are all just here for your information. I've put all the sources in that you can go check them out. But it's representative. Use it as a starting point, not an actual checklist. So in choosing these programs, again, I've said align them to your role. If you're shaping policy or risk framing, then look for the AI governance credentials and content that's aligned to frameworks like NIST. If you're responsible for tool oversight, then prioritize the applied programs that focus on the data quality, the auditability and explainability, and things that can produce actual practical artifacts that you can take back to your organization and use, like checklists, templates, sample reports. What is important to check here, though, is recency, because we all know AI is evolving very, very quickly, and outdated content isn't going to help us, right? So it's important to validate providers' credibility and then make sure the syllabi have been refreshed recently. So here's some, additional examples that you can go check out. Again, workshops and shorter trainings, those are really ideal for the learn and apply quickly, situation. They're especially valuable when you need to build confidence fast and be able to translate those concepts into your day-to-day practices. But when choosing these options, again, prioritize offerings that produce tangible artifacts. Again, the checklist, the sample logs, because they don't just reinforce learning. I mean, they help you build that evidence capability that you can reuse within your role and in your organization. And then here's some additional examples. Again, I just try to throw them in. It's just kind of a takeaway list, but rather than trying to absorb everything, choose one option that aligns with your role and then make that commitment. What can I go do in the next 90 days? And an important, I think, really important to note is that treat your AI education as an ongoing program. And actually, it's not just about AI, it's just basic or RIM profession, because there's a lot of things that continue to evolve. Technology evolves, just the way that we do business evolves. So you have to treat it as an ongoing program. It's not just a one-time activity. So think about setting just a simple rhythm. I keep focusing on quarterly because that's how I operate with my organization, right? It's just an example. But if you have a quarterly goal, such as one course completed, or I was able to, work on and apply an artifact within, one of my work processes, or I was able to, complete one governance review. It's just something, that keeps us moving forward. The other thing too I've been looking at is keep it in artifacts diary, like things around decision logs, my threshold rationales, like my bias and drift testing notes and my audit exports, because I'm trying to make sure that my learning is captured in tangible outputs, not just I've attended it and I've walked away and now I really don't remember what was talked about and I have nothing to show for it. You look at it as a kind of a growing evidence trail, right? It's what turns your education into a defensible practice and allows you to demonstrate the maturity and oversight and continuous improvement over time to your management. So the closing message is this: leadership and AI-driven RIM, it's about clarity. It's clear ethics, a sustainable learning cadence, it's a disciplined critical thinking, standards-aligned practices, and a clear sense of purpose. When every AI initiative is tied back to trust, compliance, and risk reduction, technology becomes an enabler rather than a liability. And that's how RIM turns AI from innovation into something credible, defensible, and sustainable. Our value isn't managing technology, it's managing evidence, accountability, and trust as technology evolves. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheri. That was such a great presentation. I've never heard a lot of those things framed in that way, specifically for RIM. So I really appreciated that. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A, but just a couple things that I pulled out as I was going that really stood out was coming to the conversation and being able to say, knowing enough about it, like you said, and be able to say yes, and here's how we govern that.
Mhm.
Like, I think a lot of people, in RIM and IG groups are sometimes seen as kind of a barrier, right? And so that
Oh, yeah.
really is, yeah, like we want to support you in this, and here's how we can govern it. I will be stealing that and reusing it for sure. But the other thing too was really aligning your next thing you're going to spend some
Mhm.
time growing and developing in on something you can apply right away that
Yeah.
applies to your pilot or project. I think that was great advice. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for that.
Well,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, because one thing I neglected to mention, because even within my own organization, right, you have people look at you've got records information management, right? But then you've got your data management, your enterprise data management, data governance, and they tend to be split, and they
Hmm.
shouldn't be, because data governance, right, it's we overlap. They're more around the structured, your master data, but we've kind of got the foundation. And so like I've been working, we're doing some pilots I can't really get into, but I'm actually working with the tech guys, and I do sit in technology actually, but underneath the CISO organization.
Hmm.
But I'm partnering with some of these tech guys because we're doing some POCs specific around AI. And, I think so they're starting to understand like, oh, this does matter. You care
Yeah.
about classification. Oh, you care about lineage. Yeah, I
Yes.
do. But, and
Yes.
it's not their fault, right? It's because
Right.
part of it is too, is we have to push and engage.
Hmm.
And we're all busy and they're always just like, I don't have time for you, but you have to find a way to get yourself inserted and show that knowledge. And that's where that kind of fluency, you have to be able to
For sure.
speak to it enough so they understand. It's like you understand where they're coming from in their tech talk, but you don't have to be, again, a data scientist, which again,
Hmm.
I wish I could be. I really think that's cool.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And it's one of those things where you can at least speak to say, this is why my part matters, and this is why your part matters, and here's how we can both get there with it, how we can
Hmm.
help each other. So I
Hmm.
love that. So around the topic of AI education, since that was kind of where we rounded out, and you had a bunch of great resources there, but is there a favorite for you for AI education that you find yourself turning to regularly?
No, I mean, because again, I look at it that it just depends on what I'm working on in the moment.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Good
and
reminder to cast a broad
you
net and
you
keep your
have,
eyes open.
yeah, and there's so much. I mean, again, take that with a grain of salt, right? Because I mean, I pulled that, I mean, doing research and all that, but again, that those classes they can change on a dime.
Hmm.
And that's where I
And
really
the
started digging
tools.
into kind of like the universities. I'm like, I pulled that out because it was getting just too in the weeds.
Yep.
And I mean, I could have spent like 10 minutes just talking about that stuff.
That's right.
Um,
That's
and
right.
it can be expensive. If your
Yeah.
organization doesn't have the funding for the university programs, you try to
Hmm.
look. I mean, I do look for the free stuff, I will say, because again, and budgets are tight, but I still try to make sure that it aligns with what I'm doing.
Yep. And really
So,
keeping it, close to
mhm,
home, not necessarily a 5-year thing. Like what's
yep,
something you're doing right now that you
yep.
can take and run with? So the other question that came in was, are you seeing organizations develop new AI policies, or are they adding AI on to existing policies such as acceptable use?
Both. It's both. I mean, but I think it is better to have a standalone AI machine learning policy because
Mm,
we have that standalone policy. We also have a terms of use for Gen AI policy, but then I've got sections I've got an information lifecycle governance standard, so I've got an AI section in there, because it's relevant from a standards perspective. So you have to think
Hmm.
about what the content is, what the target audience, what message you're trying to give. And and also I have it in my training because I'm just updating my
Hmm.
training. Um, but I think it depends on your organization and how it operates. But I feel like having a standalone AI policy is much cleaner than have it embedded because then you can train to that, you can point to that specifically,
Hmm.
as opposed to a section in one, general acceptable use. Because right, we have an acceptable use for securing and protecting data,
Right.
but that's to me is not the right place for AI because it's a much broader topic.
Hmm. Agreed. That's a great point. Well, I'm going to bring up my slide share just one more time as we can let folks trickle in any other final questions before we wrap up. But again, the slideshow and the recording will be shared with everyone who registered today, as well as any ARMA Madison chapter members. So we'll get that out to you within a week or so. And then we did have a pre-approval code for the IGP here too that I'll put up on the screen and then we can drop into the chat as well. But without seeing, let's see, we have another question in the chat. Do you have any sample policies that you can share? This one always gets tricky when we're asking those around from our
I
RIM
know.
people.
Yeah, I can't share policies. That's against my
Yep,
policy.
that's right.
That's against my organizational policy. I mean, but you can go out and Google. I mean, there are lots of templates out there. I mean, it's because again, you really need to customize it to your organization and how you use it.
Hmm.
Um, but it's like, no, there's plenty of templates out there. So that would be my recommendation. But yeah, even our clients, they ask for our policies and
Hmm.
I can't give our clients our policies. So I have a summary that is for, external use on that. So,
Yep.
and I do love John's, I love IG and DG to merge and become DIG. That's
Yes.
hilarious.
Yes.
It's kind of like for me, I didn't want to ever, I'm called information records governance because if you put it records and information governance, then it turns into RIG.
Yep.
So not cool.
Yep. Yep.
So not cool.
We've got to work on our acronyms to
I
be a
know.
little bit I'm sure AI could help us with that. We'll put
Uh-huh.
that in a prompt for the next time.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
Right.
But thank you for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak
It
to you
was
guys.
great to have you. And I know I took away a good handful of nuggets. So thank you so much. And the rest of the group, I think I saw we had 50 or so folks on with us today. So really appreciate it. And with that, we'll end the meeting. Thanks again,
Yeah.
everybody.
Have a great day. Thank
You
you.
too. Bye now.
Bye.